I'm Jonathan Messenger, broadcasting to you live from my home, where I record a kids podcast with my son, Griffin.
John dreams of inspiring other parents to create something with their kids. American Family Insurance is helping to make that dream happen right now.
Dad, what else does a monster look like?
It was so huge.
John's podcast began at home, and your dreams can too. Learn more about American Family's home insurance at mfam.com. American Family Insurance. Insure carefully, dream fearlessly.
American Family Mutual Insurance Company, SI, and its operating company, 6000 American Parkway, Madison, Wisconsin, 53783.
Will the winner of the Des Bryant sweepstakes actually be a loser? Can you mine any fantasy value out of the Detroit backfield quagmire? And who is our favorite rookie receiver from this year's crop? Plus, FFPC 500 Dynasty League number 25 champion Dustin Miller sits in the co-host seat tonight to break down how he won his title, why he is keeping the faith on Andrew Luck, and much more. We've got a great show for you. Dustin Miller is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your special Eric Balkman Show edition of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour starts now.
Live from the WRST radio studios in beautiful Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and heard around the world on the WRST stream. It's the Eric Balkman Show.
Thank you so much, Rob. Greetings and salutations, all you Balkaholics and Gerzakinetics. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. I'm your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman, and my normal co-host is indeed the patron saint of fantasy football, the Dizzle Dave Gerzak. But pinch hitting for him tonight is a FFPC player who entered the world of high-stakes fantasy football with a 2012 entry into the Football Guys Players Championship. And after a successful run in the championship round, he parlayed that into the purchase of a 750 Dynasty Orphan and a 500 Dynasty Startup team for the 2013 season. In the last couple of years, he's acquired 50-50 ownership of a 500 and 250 Dynasty Startup League with a couple of friends, and has also managed to win 3 league championships between the FPC and Dynasty Leagues. Please welcome in the $500 number 25 FFPC Dynasty League reigning champion and my co-host for this week, Mr. Dustin Miller. Dustin, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for the invitation.
I appreciate you coming on. Is it as icy and stormy where you're at right now as it is in beautiful northeast Wisconsin?
Actually, I'm not all that far away from you. I'm down in the Quad Cities along the Mississippi. Today, not so bad. Yesterday was beautiful. Today, not so bad. Tomorrow gets a little worse, and we're looking at snow again on Sunday, unfortunately. So, yay, Midwest weather. I think
the forecast here is 12 inches of snow tomorrow, and then I believe it's supposed to be 85 and sunny the day after. Just the wonderful world of changing weather patterns. And we won't talk any weather tonight. We'll talk about plenty of fantasy football, including how you should handle Cameron Meredith in best ball leagues this season now that he is officially Saint Cameron Meredith. Our thoughts on Mark Walton, Michael Gallup, and a ton more as we creep up on the start the 2018 NFL Draft. And Dustin, I know you probably as a Dynasty player get as excited as anyone for the NFL Draft. It's coming up, man, less than 2 weeks away. We're basically less than 2 weeks away from round 2. Round 1 will have started 2 weeks ago last night. So we're into the final 2 weeks. How exciting is it to know we're finally going to know where all these guys are going to be playing football this coming season in just a couple of weeks?
Rookie fever is gearing up, and we're almost into high gear with the rookie fever. I think it'll be good. The draft happens, and all of the speculating and trying to slot these guys and how you feel about their talent. You get to put them into a position where the talent and opportunity meet, and you can really start feeling out how you want to go about approaching these guys as NFL prospects.
Yeah, new information will be upon us. We'll know where these guys are playing. We'll know what kind of offensive system. We'll know what kind of opportunity they're going to have. It's going to be very exciting stuff. Shout out to the chat room right now. Feel free to post any questions you might have in there. If you want to connect with us on Twitter, you can do so at HSFFHour. I am at Eric Balkman. You can post on our Facebook page at facebook.com/HSFFHour. If you want to give us a call tonight, 347-426-3682 is the phone number. That's 347-GAME-OVA. You can also email the show at the inbox, highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. Our producer and mutual friend Rob and our audio engineer Bryce will get those questions to myself and to Dustin in the fantasy feedback segment later on, coming up in the bottom of the hour, second half of the show. We'll try to get to as many as we can tonight. Before we get into the show, I want to remind everybody that the Football Guys Players Championship Early Bird promotion is live as long as you are buying a team before June 30th and drafting it before July 15th. You will get a free $35 FFPC credit, and we'll do that up to 3 times for you. So you can get up to 3 of those free teams at myffpc.com. Don't forget the main event early bird expires on May 31st. You can get $100 off your team, $300 off each additional team, and room discounts at Planet Hollywood going on right now thanks to our Casino Connections host, Greg Sidoris. You can email him, lbh777@aol.com. You can also book the rooms yourself right on the myffpc.com homepage. If you scroll all the way down to the main event section, there's a little banner down there. Click through that, and you'll be able to book your room right there. It will be a matter of minutes. Thank you, Internet. Register for best ball, superflexes, and more starting at $35 at myffpc.com. And the next Dynasty startups we have will be going on May 5th. That is a week after the draft, the NFL draft concludes. There's a ton of options of startups that are open on that date. So check that out, myffpc.com/dynasty. Dustin, let's talk about you for a second here. Tell the listeners what you do for a living when you're not crushing FFPC Dynasty leagues.
Exciting stuff. Spent most of my life, about 20 years, doing accounting.
Accounting? Is that? I'm sorry that you cut out there. Is that what you said?
I spent about used to hotels and restaurants, created me bed and management type stuff on the construction side of the company now. Basically, whatever nobody else wants to do, it's kind of what I do.
This is the show that no one wanted to host, the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. So that's how I got roped into that. It'll be very awesome to do this show with you tonight. This is why I do it. So that's exciting that we can get this done. Hey, we already have Dustin a question from the chat room, and I don't want you to. It's kind of an open thing here, but Aunt Jemima, former guest on the show, he wants to know what your rookie running back ranks are, and I don't want you to go like 20 deep on it, but if you could give us your top few, maybe your top 3, 4, or 5 rookie running backs as they stand right now, since we don't know where these guys are going, how would they shape up?
Clearly you have to, at number 1, you're taking Saquon Barkley. After Barkley, I still like Darius Geis, second best out of those guys. I go Nick Chubb at number 3. And then for me, a bit of a toss-up between Sony Michel, or however the hell you say his name, and Rashard Penny. There. I went 5.
Okay, that's perfect. This is interesting. I want to get into this with you a little bit. Now, Sony Michel, I think, is the more of the Nick Chubb is the more traditional power NFL running back between the two Georgia running backs. Sony Michel is maybe a little bit more athletic, a little bit more agile, gets to the outside easier, catches more passes. Why do you like Chubb better than Michel?
I guess I'm ever the optimist. And Chubb, 2-3 years ago before that injury, he was probably, we get to this this draft, then you might be looking at Nick Chubb as potentially on level ground with Saquon Barkley if he doesn't have that injury and he continues playing the way he had played. Came back and performed well this past season, looked really good at the combine. So I think he's on an upward trajectory to potentially get back where he was. And if so, I like that style. I like him a little bit better than Michelle. However, today's modern NFL, you got the guys who can catch the passes, and it's more of a passing league than it has been in the past. So I wouldn't be shocked if you wanted to argue that you'd go Sony Michel instead. I'd argue with you, but I could see your side of the argument.
Yeah, and it's not like you have Michel as your 15th running back. I mean, he's number 4 for you. So clearly, right. These guys are very, very close for you. So perfect. Okay, good. Let's talk about that 500 number 25 title that you won last year, and specifically, I'm curious about your tight end on this team, Kyle Rudolph, with the emergence of both Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs last year. Can we see maybe a bump in production, given that his quarterback is going to be improving from Case Keenum to Kirk Cousins? Can we still expect a bump in production from Kyle Rudolph this year, despite having to deal with those two talented wide receivers on the same offense?
I'd love to say yes, since he's on my team. However, I think if you look at the Vikings, what kind of team do they want to be? I think they're more built around that defense, and if they can come with the same strong defense that they've had last year, they're going to want to probably run the ball a little bit more. You bring in and you pay Cousins what you paid him, so clearly they'll throw the ball, but you've got Diggs, you got Thielen, and if you look at what happened last year, 2 years ago you had Kyle Rudolph catching a ton of passes and being a red zone target. Last year he didn't catch nearly as many passes, was still a red zone target, so I don't think he loses that appeal. He's still going to be a guy that they look to when they're down in scoring range, but I don't see that he's going to go back to where he was 2 years ago and catch 80-plus passes again, unfortunately.
Yeah, and the offensive line, I mean, we saw that for Minnesota that it took a step forward last year. It's definitely improved. Dalvin Cook will be coming off that injury, and he looked very good in limited action last year. And you got to believe that Minnesota is going to be, playing from ahead a lot, given how talented that defense is too. So I got to wonder how. I don't know if the passing pie got any bigger with Kirk Cousins. Maybe it gets more efficient. So you could be dead on with the red zone targets when you talk about Rudolph and his value going forward, at least for this season. In this league, Dustin, you flipped your first and second round picks this year for Jarvis Landry this past August, and Landry obviously helped you win the title. If you were going to move Landry now that he's a Brown and knowing that he's signed this monster extension, would you be okay with actually getting a little bit less than what you paid for, what you paid for him back in August, given that, he has Josh Gordon there, he has David Njoku there, potentially Saquon Barkley, but even if he doesn't have Barkley, he's for sure going to have Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson there, so a lot more talent around him in Cleveland than in Miami. So would you be okay taking a little bit less than what you paid for back for Landry if you were going to try to move him now?
If you asked me this last week, I would have probably had a different answer. But considering how much money they just gave him, you have to assume that they intend to give him the ball enough to justify that contract. Clearly, there's a lot more receiving talent currently on that roster. I wasn't thrilled to see him get traded to the Browns. I was hoping for something like the 49ers, an offense where he'd be utilized a little bit more heavily like he was, getting that high target volume. But at this point, I'm going to wait and see holding pattern on him. I'd want to get close to the same value back on him, just solely based on the fact they paid him like the fifth highest receiver in the NFL right now. So I'm holding, but I'm not holding my breath that he's going to see the same volume. There's definitely a lot more talented receivers on this team than there was in Miami when he was there.
If I was to set the over-under at 80% this year, 80% of his production from 2017, is that a fair number? Would you go over or under that he gets 80% of the fantasy points that he put up last year?
I think, that's probably a fair number. I'd like to think it'll be slightly above that. I'd like to think that he'd be at about 85 to 90. I'd keep my fingers crossed, but again, we're in Cleveland, and the quarterback is Tyrod Taylor or a rookie, and you've got Josh Gordon and Duke Johnson and Njoku. Still have Corey Coleman there, so yeah, right. He sits actually on a couple of my teams, so I'm trying to be optimistic with him, but granted, I would say that 80% is probably a fair assumption of where he ends up based on volume from last year.
Dustin Miller sitting in for Dave Gerzak tonight on
out of it.
Well, Dustin, I think the issue is I got to stop asking you about players on your team because you're like me. You always want to look optimistically about the players in your team, and it's difficult sometimes. We cover up the warts with our, their warts with the rose-colored glasses that we're looking at them with. So it's well, I will ask you this. The next guy I want to talk about is Andrew Luck. Now, this is a guy that my normal co-host Dave Gerzak has been just destroying, saying that there's a real possibility that his career is done. You could not be any more down on Andrew Luck than Dave is, and I for the most part I share his a disposition on Luck, although I guess I'm a little bit more hopeful than he is. You look at what you had to do for Dynasty cutdowns for this team, and you chose to release Alex Smith and keep Andrew Luck as your only quarterback. So obviously you're a believer in Andrew Luck for this team. Tell us why you think that he is actually going to be fine and have a nice 2018 bounce-back season.
That one was more strategic than being smarter than the rest of you. Clearly, we're not going to cut Andrew Luck off that team, and keeping Alex Smith was something that was definitely under consideration. With that team in particular, we watched the cuts taking place on other teams. And we saw that Jared Goff was going to be available in the draft because he got cut. We saw Drew Brees was cut. So hanging on to Alex Smith for us on that team, it was an easy cut to let go of Alex Smith, with the thoughts that there were going to be a few solid veteran quarterbacks out there to choose from at some point, whether we got Smith back or somebody else. That was just to keep somebody at a different position, really. It's not that we're thinking that Andrew Luck's going to come back strong, although every indication up until this very last thing I read made it sound like things were heading in the right direction, but apparently he hasn't thrown an actual football yet. So, good.
Yeah, well, and I got to believe, Jameis Winston, he probably hasn't thrown an actual NFL football this offseason. I would imagine. There's probably other NFL quarterbacks, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers. Those guys are taking the offseason off to save the wear and tear on their arms. So maybe it's not a huge thing, but I get what you're saying. With these short benches that you can only keep so many players in the FFPC Dynasty leagues, it's difficult to keep multiple quarterbacks, especially if you've cultivated a pretty good roster of backs, receivers, and tight ends as you have. And you can obviously get some luck insurance, even if he is, starts off slow or he's just not all the way back. Getting guys like Goff and players like that off the waiver wire, you'll be able to plug those guys in pretty easily.
Yep. It looked like there was going to be a lot of available good talent, whether we kept Smith or not, so we let him go. Actually, there's another team in that league that held on to 4 quarterbacks. We assumed two of those were going to hit the waiver wire as well. So not as many quarterbacks as we anticipated, but still, I think with rookies coming in and with the guys that are out there, we were comfortable in keeping our fingers crossed on Luck and then being able to draft somebody to start in those first few weeks of the season if he's not ready to go yet.
Deshaun Jackson was also, along with Alex Smith, another guy that you decided to cut. And you kept guys like Willie Snead, Rashard Matthews, and John Ross on this team. So I'm just kind of curious about your thought process on keeping those. I mean, I think all three of those guys are younger than Deshaun Jackson, so I get that.
Yep.
But maybe they don't have the track record that Deshaun Jackson has. So talk a little bit about the thought process that went into cutting D-Jax and keeping those other three receivers I mentioned.
So I'll start with the easy one. John Ross, he was the 9th overall pick last year in the NFL draft. Came into camp hurt, never really progressed, never got much of an opportunity. Sat the whole year. He was a wait and see for us. There wasn't a chance we were cutting him so soon. Rashard Matthews, he looked really good in the games he played for the beginning part of the season. Corey Davis didn't really progress the way that anybody expected him to, and Matthews kind of stepped into that role of being the number one receiver. Eric Decker was gone, so we thought that hanging on to Matthews made sense. He was younger and seemed to be in a better situation. It came down to Deshaun Jackson and Willie Snead were really what we were deciding between, and it was just an age and situation decision. Snead was a few years younger. He was in the Saints offense where he looked good the year before. Even though they decided to do nothing with him last season, we thought maybe a good off season would turn things around there. Clearly, that's not going to be the case with the signings they've made. But with Deshaun Jackson, older and in Tampa Bay, they weren't using him, and this was the decision: would we ever feel comfortable putting Deshaun Jackson in the starting lineup in any given week? And the answer was no. I mean, he's too boomer bust, so we decided we'd let him go. Tried to move him before cutting him, but there wasn't anybody who was willing to take him on. So he became the cut.
You got to believe that Tampa is probably going to be adding a running back early in the draft, a running back that they probably will be throwing to. They just gave Cameron Brate a lot of money, and they have high expectations for O.J. Howard, who was their first-round pick last year, too. So it's not like Deshaun Jackson was going to be – and not only that, target hog Mike Evans, obviously still on the roster as well. So it's not like he was going to be the focal point of that offense, going forward there, too. I mentioned O.J. Howard playing the tight end position, and he was a rookie last year, and obviously, struggled a little bit. He came on with the touchdowns. I think he had like 6 or 7 touchdowns last year. But I'm curious how you handle these guys, these tight ends in their rookie years, because they struggle typically, unless your name is Evan Ingram or Tony Gonzalez, but they do get 1.5 points per catch in the FFPC format. With these short cut-down benches that you have in the FFPC, Dustin, how do you handle rookie tight ends in these rookie drafts?
It's never been on purpose, but for whatever reason, in all the drafts that I've done, I have yet to end up with a high-round rookie tight end in any of my drafts. I think in the league that I won last year, the 25, the 500, number 25, we drafted Austin Hooper as a rookie, and with him, it's been you have to be patient. If you get a guy who you think is talented, you sit on them and hope that at some point they get the opportunity and they actually catch on and they produce. But overall, I haven't run into having to deal with the rookie tight ends. I did pick up Adam Shaheen on a different team last year on waivers with the intent of holding on to him, but partly because he was, highly touted rookie tight end, plus I'm a Bears fan, so I wanted to get a piece of that if Mitch Trubisky ever pans out. Happened to pick up Trey Burton, though, off of waivers in that same league a little bit later in the season. So when it came time to make cuts, Burton had already signed, and so I let Shaheen go. So they hold their value. So if you grab one and you're patient, even if you decide that it's time to give up on them, typically somebody's going to be willing to give you something in return because of that 1.5 premium that you get on the receptions. But I haven't had to deal with it very often. Unfortunately, I don't know. I haven't had very many good tight ends. I keep sitting on the Tyler Eiferts of the world who never make it onto the field.
You know, speaking of the Bears and speaking of tight ends, you know, you being a fan, I'm kind of curious, how do you see, because we know that Matt Nagy came out and said that, yeah, Trey Burton is going to be playing that Travis Kelce role for us, but they, you know, Adam Shaheen was a fairly high pick last year, and he's such a monster around the goal line. How do you think the fantasy production between those two guys, between those two tight ends is going to shake out? Are they going to cannibalize each other's value all season? Are you going to, you know, kind of be playing a guessing game with not knowing which one to start? Or can you feel good about starting Burton, who might have a top 10 season in him this year?
Toss up. Realistically, Shaheen had a couple of moments last season, but you know, he didn't jump out at me as a guy who was going to be the guy. And when the Bears went out and signed Burton to the deal that they signed him to as a free agent, that kind of signified to me that was the direction to look in if I was gonna hang on to one. So I think that Burton's probably he's got his foot in the door. Once they get into training camp, if he can do what he did when he was given his opportunities when Ertz was hurt last year with the Eagles, if he can contribute and he can play like he played last season, I think Burton runs away with it.
Le'Veon Bell, let's talk about him. He's not getting any younger, and he actually might not even be a Pittsburgh Steeler playing for a different offense than the juggernaut that he's on come 2019. Have you had any thoughts about trying to sell high on him or you know, trying to get a little bit younger at the position, seeing what his value is right now, seeing what you can get for him? Or are you, you know, still riding this gravy train of a guy who, you know, is consistently a top 2 or 3 overall fantasy performer for the last, you know, whatever it's been, 4 or 5 years?
It's crazy when 26 or 27 years old and you're in the twilight of your career, potentially.
Yeah, trying to get younger. Exactly. I know. It's so bizarre, such as the running back position in the NFL, I guess.
Me personally, I'm holding him if I can hold him. Love his game. The fact that his receiving skills are what they are, I can see him, even if it gets to a point where he can't be the primary back in 2 or 3 years, I think he still maintains value as a receiving back. And would you be shocked if 3 years from now, if they decide that they don't want to hand him the ball 20 or 25 times a game, if they stuck him in the slot and let him catch 15, you know, have 15 targets out of the slot in any given game? Wouldn't surprise me a bit. So for me, I'm hanging on to Le'Veon Bell. I had him in 3 leagues last year. Hanging on in most of them. I did actually trade him in a league last year where I wasn't going to make the playoffs, so it was time to look to the future a little bit, and was approached by a contending team who had David Johnson. So I managed to flip Le'Veon Bell and Jerick McKinnon, who at the time was just a throw-in. I kind of kicked myself on this one at this point. But Le'Veon Bell and Jerick McKinnon I traded last season for David Johnson, Sterling Shepard, and what ended up being the 3rd pick in this year's draft. So it felt really good at the time. Jerick McKinnon going to the Niners and being the main guy potentially there brings that a little bit back to even. But if I was going to trade him, I was only going to trade him for somebody like a David Johnson, though.
For someone who has played in home dynasty leagues or basement dynasty leagues with their friends, and decide, hey, you know what, I'm going to try one of these FFPC dynasty leagues and see how it goes. What's the best piece of advice that you can give them as they, you know, begin year 1 of their first FFPC dynasty league? I would
say, this is the thing that I would tell anybody who is about to get into any league for the first time, is to make sure that you completely understand the rules and the scoring system for the league that you're about to join. I know that there's so many different roster requirements and league scoring systems out there for I get people that come to me every year. I got friends, for whatever reason, I'm the guy that they turn to for their fantasy football advice. And all the time they're asking me for, okay, how should I go about doing my draft? And they give me their scoring system. And it's amazing how I have 5 friends come to me, and each of those 5 friends has a different scoring system. And there's strategic advantage. You can get an advantage if you're paying attention to the fact that your running backs get a point per carry in some of these weird leagues. But specifically in the FFPC, with the fact that you've got the 1.5 per reception for a tight end, that bumps them up in value a little bit. If you're paying attention, you see that guys get points for scoring whatever kind of touchdown they score. So if you're on the fence between 2 receivers and one of them returns punts, that ability to get the points on a punt return touchdown might be the difference between who you draft. So I guess I always tell people you got to know what you're getting into. So know your league, know the rules, because if you do, you might gain a little bit of a competitive advantage over somebody who doesn't.
Dustin Miller, the FFPC 500 number 25 Dynasty League winner from last season, sitting in for Dave Gerzak tonight. We're going to get some instant trade proposal reaction because I have just been proposed a trade by Two-Packer, mascot of the show, who's actually in the chat room right now. In a Dynasty League that we play in together, he has just offered me the 203 rookie pick along with Amari Cooper for my Mike Evans. Where do you fall on this? Which end of the deal would you rather be getting here, Dustin?
2.03 and Cooper for Mike Evans. I might.
This is a surprisingly good trade offer from Two-Packer. This is way better than what I normally get from him. So this is why I'm asking the expert now.
I'm high on Mike Evans, but I'm equally as high on Amari Cooper. I think that Crabtree's gone. Gruden comes in and says that they want to run the offense through Cooper. I wouldn't be opposed to potentially pulling the trigger on that deal. I think it's a pretty fair deal. And if you're in love with Mike Evans, then you pass. But if like for me, I'm relatively close between the two of those guys. I think Cooper has some upside. I'd maybe make that deal.
Yeah, if it wasn't close, I wouldn't have brought it up on the show, but it was close. I think Amari Cooper's in for a big bounce back season too. I'll try to crowdsource it in the chat room. Anybody who is listening in, Cooper in the 203 or Mike Evans, tell me which side you want to have on that. And now let's go to some actual emails for some real listeners, and for you, Dustin, that came in this week. And the first one is from John in Falmouth, Massachusetts. Falmouth, Massachusetts? I don't know how to pronounce it. He writes, "Hi, Dustin. Is there one player or maybe a couple of players that you find yourself owning in several dynasty leagues?" That is John in Falmouth, Massachusetts. Thank you for the email. You mentioned Jarvis Landry earlier, Dustin, that you had him in a few leagues. Is there anybody else that you find yourself owning in multiple leagues?
I was looking at some of this stuff earlier today. Like I just mentioned, up until towards the end of last season, I had Le'Veon Bell in 3 of my 4 high-stakes dynasties. In 3 of the 4, I've got Tyler Eifert. Don't tell me I don't know why I can't quit Tyler Eifert. I should, but I can't.
Neither can the Bengals.
I can't get away from the guy. Those 2 are show up most often on between those 4 high stakes rosters. There's a couple of receivers. And Derrick Henry, actually, I take that back. Derrick Henry I've got on 3 teams as well. And so keeping my fingers crossed, I'm a Derrick Henry truther. Hopefully this year is the year.
Yeah, Derrick Henry, I'm kind of curious, with the signing of that Dion Lewis thing, does this, obviously you're hoping that they would not bring in a guy and pay a guy like Dion Lewis as much money as they're getting, because he's going to be a big part of their offense. But, Henry still is there. He is still going to get a lot of carries. DeMarco Murray's not there anymore. I think maybe it hurts his pass-catching, fantasy goodness more than anything else, but he's still going to be a big part of that running game.
Yeah, I think he's for sure the early down back. He's going to be out there on first and second downs. I think he looked decent last year when given the opportunity on third downs. It's not like he has rock hands. He was catching the ball pretty well. I was thrilled when they cut Murray. I was less than thrilled when they signed Dion Lewis because they didn't bring him in cheap. So yeah, he's going to probably get plenty of third down work and passing situation work. But I think Derrick Henry is still, for me, he's people have inquired, and I'm not letting him go. He's somebody that I see his talent is too great to have sat on him since he was a rookie. I'm going to see this thing through and hope that this is the year where he breaks through.
Other email, this is another trade offer here. This is from Jim in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He writes, I just got Adam Thielen offered to me in my Dynasty League for my Juju Smith-Schuster. Would you make this deal? Congrats on the FFPC title. That is Jim in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So Dynasty League, I'm assuming this is just PPR. Which guy would you rather have, Juju Smith-Schuster or Adam Thielen?
That's tough. I think I hang on to Adam Thielen, not because I don't like Juju Smith-Schuster, but you've already got Antonio Brown, and I still think Martavis Bryant, if he gets his head on straight, becomes a bigger factor in that offense than he was last season. More mouths to feed there. Stephon Diggs gets his in Minnesota, but Thielen was a guy that they looked to a lot. I think I hang on to Adam Thielen still.
Yeah, and we already mentioned, too, Le'Veon Bell is going to command a lot of catches in that offense as well. So really best case scenario, Juju Smith-Schuster is the number 3 guy on that offense. And maybe that'll change, with Antonio Brown getting up there and with Le'Veon Bell, who knows what his contract's going to be like in 2019. We know they love JJSS, but Adam Thielen getting a lot of targets right now. It's not like he's an old guy either. I mean, he's going to be around for quite a while. Let's get to our final question of the interview, and we'll get into some news and stuff that's going around in the league, Dustin. But a guy that's going to be that you think is going to be a first-round rookie draft dynasty bust, and then maybe a guy who is going to fall to the mid to late second, maybe third round of rookie drafts that you think is actually going to have a very good fantasy career.
First round dynasty bust would be any receiver I take in the first round typically. So I'm going to say Cortland Sutton's our guy. He's the type of receiver that I'm normally attacking in the early to mid first round. He has the physical tools, but he's a little unpolished. So you bring him in and you're waiting for him to get it all figured out, and then he never does. So Cortland Sutton, I think for me, is the guy that I see as being a first-round bust. Later round guys that I think will have good careers. I'll say I like 2 guys I like: Deion Kane from Clemson and Dante Pettis from Washington. 2 other receivers that I've had better luck in drafting in the later rounds, the receivers. So maybe these guys actually do pan out. I think Kane has all the physical tools to be a good – I don't know that any of these guys end up being like solid wide receiver 1s, but I think Deion Kane can be a good wide receiver 2 deep threat. And if Pettis can put on a little bit of weight, he can be a good slot wide receiver 2.
Okay, all great stuff, and I want to, obviously, we're so close to the draft. I want to keep talking about rookies, but there was some news that happened around the NFL this week that was not just about rookies and who they're meeting with and whatsoever, what have you. You have a receiver that was on the Bears that is now on the Saints. Cameron Meredith, 2 years, $9.6 million, including $5.4 million guaranteed. This was the offer sheet that Cameron Meredith signed with the Saints last week. The Bears had 5 days to match it. They chose not to match it based on, quote, medical reasons. Obviously, we all saw that gruesome knee injury last year with Meredith tearing his ACL and MCL in the preseason. And you look at what New Orleans has now. Michael Thomas and Ted Ginn already there. You add Cameron Meredith there. And Willie Snead, we talked about him earlier, Dustin. Obviously, things maybe have changed a little bit for him in New Orleans. But you look at what Cameron Meredith can do in 2018 this season. What's his upside? What are you expecting from him fantasy-wise? Could he be a top 30 receiver? Could he be even better than that in New Orleans?
Interesting note. Cameron Meredith went to my high school.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, me and Cameron Meredith. St. Joe's Chargers, Westchester. So Cameron Meredith, I loved Cameron Meredith 2 years ago with the Bears. Kind of came out of nowhere and looked every bit the part of being a solid receiver in the NFL. That knee injury last year, though, was horrific. I don't know. You'd like to think that the Bears, it's not like the Bears have so much receiver talent that they should be letting guys walk away who they really think could be productive. So for me, it's a little telling that they didn't match that contract. Clearly in a better offense, better passing offense, whether you're the number 2 or number 3 guy in that offense, I still think that that's a potentially productive role. It all comes down to that knee, though. If his knee is healthy, I think he has a great season. I think he is a great fit in that offense. Tall, big slot receiver, a la Marquez Colston. I think he could do really well, but I don't know. That injury last year was pretty ugly. If he's healed from it, though, I think he has a good year.
And obviously the ADP data that we have on Cameron Meredith isn't great. I mean, he was going in the 15th round, but most of these drafts were conducted before this offer sheet was not matched by Chicago. So we'll have to see where he shakes out there. Could be a boom bust guy. You got to keep in. I think this is on the Football Guys podcast, the Audible podcast on Thursday night, and I can't remember who brought it up. One of the hosts on the show said that they had heard that even back in October, the Bears were not planning on having Cameron Meredith, making plans that he would be on the roster, or at least be able to contribute in 2018. This was already happening in October, so obviously it was a super serious knee injury, but New Orleans feels good enough about it to give him $5.4 million guarantee, give him a 2-year contract. He could have a big-time season there if that knee does check out, and we'll obviously know as the season gets closer if he is playing in the preseason, if he is doing a lot of things and making plays. That will be something that we will definitely be watching. ESPN's Adam Schefter says that the belief around the league is that the Giants will no longer trade Odell Beckham before or during the upcoming draft coming up at the end of the month. The Rams obviously decide to go ahead and pull the trigger on Brandon Cooks, and that really seemed to be the only landing spot for Beckham that we had heard, at least publicly. And it seems like since then it's that he is going to be a Giant this year. So we know that the Giants had every opportunity, Dustin, to stand behind him, saying that he will not be traded, that he's going to be part of the team. And they really never did that. They basically said he's on the team right now, and we'll see, and stuff like that. So it was not exactly a ringing endorsement for Beckham. Does this, knowing that he's probably going to be playing for the Giants this year, does this change your mind as far as him being a first-round redraft pick in like the Football Guys Players Championship or the main event? Would you still feel okay drafting him that high, knowing that, man, the two sides here seem a little contentious and maybe it could get ugly? What are your thoughts on Beckham as a first-round pick this season?
No, I'm absolutely. If somebody wants to pass on him and let him slide later into the first round, I'll take him. I have no qualms whatsoever. It's a business, and that business end of things is what it is. But I think once a talent like that is out on the field, they're going to get him the ball. They want to win games. I can't imagine that they'd try and do anything to phase him out. So I don't think anything changes. If he comes back and he's healthy from his injury last year, I think that he's absolutely an upper 2, 3, 4 first-round pick.
500 number 25 FFPC Dynasty League champ Dustin Miller hanging out with me, Eric Balkman, on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour this week. Big news today. The news that we we're all waiting for all week. Des Bryant, Jerry Jones have their sit-down today, and it ends with Des Bryant no longer being a Cowboy. He was told that he has been released. The Cowboys saved about $8.5 million against the cap. And Des Bryant now an unrestricted free agent, as he will be designated as a post-June 1st cut. So, wow, this is, a pretty big deal to see a guy like Des Bryant out there on the waiver wire. I think about the big deal that it was when the Packers cut Jordy Nelson, and Jordy Nelson is probably, 3, maybe 4 years older than Des, and Des has started to slow down a little bit. We don't see him making the big-time wow plays that he used to. But he still obviously can be a big-time contributor. Where would you like to see him land from a fantasy standpoint? Is it San Francisco? Is it Baltimore? Is it Green Bay? Is it Washington? Is it, where is the best landing spot right now? And we'll break it more down when we know where he is. But as a fantasy owner who maybe wants to see Des Bryant succeed and wants to see him do well, what's the best spot for him to do that in this season, Dustin?
I think that if he were to end up in either Green Bay or San Francisco, those would be fantastic spots for him. If it wouldn't surprise me if he ended up in Washington, just for the simple fact of getting to go and play against the Cowboys twice a year. He's been a guy that I've personally been avoiding in trade offers that have come my way, just based on the fact that he's slowed down and people are still wanting that to get the value that they were expecting to get when he was still performing the way he used to. At this point, I'm going to start throwing out some feelers potentially, because I can see after getting cut, he's the type of guy that I wouldn't be shocked at all if he came back and had an FU kind of season next year where he showed Dallas, they made a huge mistake in cutting him. I don't know. You feel like he's still got a little juice left in the tank? Well,
what's so funny about that is I traded Des Bryant in a Dynasty league, how long ago? Was it roughly a month, maybe 5 weeks, 6 weeks ago, and I got the 201 pick for him this year, and I was pretty happy about that. I didn't think I would get that much for him.
No, that's
and
good return.
I feel like, I feel like he can still be productive, but the name outweighs the game at this point for me, and I just feel like now is the time to cash in. Like, if I'm definitely not, I'm not giving up a first round pick for him in any leagues, obviously. If I had like a mid second round or late second round pick, I might consider floating that out there for him. If I, just because he will probably pick a really good landing spot for his value if he's smart, at least, unless somebody just backs up the Brinks truck and gives him a ton of cash. I'm very skeptical about Des turning this around, and I'm skeptical about him, having a good enough season to increase his dynasty value where you can get more for him and, going into the 2019 season. So I'd be walking on eggshells trying to acquire him right now. I'd be nervous about, giving up anything like that. I will say this on the flip side. Let's talk about Alan Hearns, as Wasp Guy brings up in the chat room. What does this mean for him? Because after he gets released from the Jaguars, Dallas comes out and signs him, and now he's kind of their number one receiver there. Now, even if they add a rookie, Dustin, in the draft, there's going to be a learning curve there. Is Hearns the guy to own for redraft leagues this year? I mean, this all of a sudden is looking really good for him.
I was fortunate. I can't remember which one of my teams it was, but it came down to him and one other person as my last cut. And I debated heavily on which way to go with it, and I ended up keeping Hearns. So I'm thrilled from that perspective. I really like Alan Hearns. Clearly he had a down year after he signed a big contract. He never really lived up to it, but with the Jaguars. But I still think he's a talented guy, and with the receivers that are on the roster currently, he's clearly, I think, the guy that's going to see the majority of the targets. If they went out there and started throwing the ball around right now, I'd be all over Alan Hearns if given the opportunity right now.
I think we always talk about these opportunities, these holes on these NFL teams, and we look at the NFL draft and guys who can step in for immediate fantasy value. I think of the Buccaneers running back situation. That's one that's ripe for value if they use like a second-round pick on somebody or even a third-round pick on somebody. They can step in, have immediate fantasy value. This Dallas receiver one, too, I think that, that there's going to be the opportunity for somebody to maybe not, just crush it in 2018, but if they get, somebody like DJ Moore or somebody like that, or Cortland Sutton or, whoever, some and I know there's a lot of people that are not high at Cortland Sutton, but somebody who could step in and have the opportunity to be the number one guy in 2019 could be very interesting for Dynasty value. Dustin, let's talk about the Lions running back by committee mess. Detroit Free Press's Dave Burkett said that's what he expects this to be in 2018 with Matt Patricia running things. Still has Jim Bob Cooter running his offense, so it'll be a similar, basically the same offense as they ran last year. But they added LeGarrette Blount to a core that already included Theo Riddick, Amir Abdullah, Zach Zenner, Dwayne Washington, and Detroit probably going to be adding another running back in the draft as well. Is there any value here? I mean, maybe Theo Riddick is the only guy that we can really count on this year for fantasy value because the other guys are going to be so hit or miss. Theo Riddick, if you get him in the 12th round right now, to me that's pretty good value, but the rest of the guys, Dustin, I don't know. I'm not really seeing it.
I wouldn't want anything to do with anyone other than Riddick on that team at this point, especially with the fact that it wouldn't be at all surprising if they spent a higher round pick on yet another running back to bring in to be a bell cow to groom for that role at some point. I don't want anything to do with Amir Abdullah. I don't want anything to do with LeGarrette Blount. Riddick has proven to be valuable in the passing game, and they're behind enough that that's a solid role that's going to continue to have some value. So Theo Riddick's a guy that's in bye weeks. I wouldn't mind plugging in to fill a spot on a bye week, but any of those other guys, I'm avoiding for sure.
Denver 7's Troy Rank actually reported this week that the Miami Dolphins were the ones who backed out of a trade that would have gotten them C.J. Anderson in exchange for right tackle Juwan James going to the Broncos. This was a deal that was agreed upon, and then at the last minute the Dolphins pulled out of it. So I think the interesting thing here, if you own C.J. Anderson in a Dynasty League, Dustin, he's scheduled to make $4.5 million this year for Denver, and the draft is 2 weeks away. They could add a running back there and release C.J. Anderson, and once you release a running back after the NFL draft, after these teams have already drafted running backs, it's going to be difficult for him to find a meaningful situation to contribute for fantasy owners in 2018. I think now's the time that you got to see what you can get for him because this could end up badly for C.J. Anderson owners.
I don't disagree. And I'd always been a C.J. Anderson fan. I liked his game, and it seems like he's destined to always almost play for the Dolphins, but never quite get there. But no, if I had C.J. Anderson, I'd definitely be worried right now. And if I could get anywhere near, perceived market value for him, I'd probably go ahead and unload him if I could.
It's frustrating is I actually felt really good about C.J. Anderson and talking about Tupac earlier. I actually traded I think it was my 207 pick this year for C.J. Anderson, probably about, I don't know, I felt maybe it was right around the Super Bowl. I think that's actually when it was. And I felt good okay, Denver's going to add a really good quarterback. They're going to keep Thomas and Sanders around. This offense is going to be back. They're going to go for a Super Bowl in 2018. And I felt really good about it. Now it's just man, if I got, even the 212, if somebody offered that to me, anything basically at the end of the second round, I think I give up C.J. Anderson right now just for, getting younger at the position and hopefully getting lucky with somebody who might contribute right away. But and time is running out, man, because you're playing with fire if you wait till after the NFL draft when all these teams reveal their hands and what they're going to want to do at running back, and C.J. Anderson's going to become an afterthought if Denver adds somebody, and so does everybody else. So this is it's going to be a very, very dicey situation for C.J. Anderson owners. Let's get to some emails here from listeners. Kevin in Rupert, Idaho writes, do you guys have a favorite rookie wide receiver this season? Thank you for the email, Kevin. We talked about rookie receivers a little bit already. Is maybe not necessarily your number one receiver, Dustin, but is there maybe a receiver that doesn't get talked about a lot, or a receiver that you think that's just a personal favorite of yours, given that you might be able to get him a little bit cheaper and that you think is going to have a big-time dynasty career?
Yeah. Let's see. The guy who truly is my favorite out of this group this year is DJ Moore, but he's clearly not somebody you're going to get necessarily cheap. He's not going to sneak up on you. I don't know that everybody's got him as their number one receiver, but he's certainly in the top 3 or 4. Beyond that, besides the Deion Kane and the Dante Pettis that I mentioned before, Anthony Miller's another guy that you can get later that has an interesting game that I think can translate to the NFL. I don't want to jinx anybody though, and I don't want to give away all my diamonds in the rough. I've heard a couple names of guys in my leagues already asking questions. I think they're just mining for information right now.
Yeah, picking your brain for sure. No, and listen, Dave and I said last week, we've really been saying it several weeks on the show, that DJ Moore is our favorite receiver in this class. The guy that we would say is our number one receiver. I do not like Calvin Ridley at all. I think Cortland Sutton presents a lot of headaches for fantasy owners. I think he will present a lot of headaches for fantasy owners. So DJ Moore is definitely my favorite. I also like Anthony Miller as well. This is a guy that I think is a little bit underrated. Obviously, his metrics weren't all that great, but this is a guy that was highly productive at the collegiate level, and if he would have come out and not stayed for his senior season, you'd be talking about him going much higher than where he's probably going to go in the NFL draft, given that his senior year was a little bit underwhelming. So I like him as well. I think those are both guys that I'll be looking at, in dynasty rookie drafts. Obviously more before Miller. On that tip, let's keep it going with the rookies with Troy in Saginaw, Michigan. Dear Balky and Dustin, haven't heard much on Mark Walton. Where do you expect him to go in rookie drafts, and what do you think about his career? Thanks, fellas. Thank you, Troy, for the email. Troy in Saginaw, Michigan. Okay, Mark Walton. Not a lot of guys have been talking about him. This is a guy that probably will not. Well, I can't see him going at all in the first round, and he probably, in my opinion, I don't think he goes on day 2. I think this is a day 3 pick. I'm not very excited about him. What do you think about what kind of running back Mark Walton is going to be at the pro level, Dustin?
Do I think he could find a role as a receiving back somewhere? Yeah, he in what I've watched of him. He gets in the open field, and despite the fact he didn't have, I was surprised after seeing what I saw of him on film, and then looking at his combine results, he didn't really perform that well at the combine, and I'm not sure if that's potentially because he still wasn't fully healed from the ankle injury that knocked him out of last season. But when he was healthy, you get him in the open field, and he's shifty, he's quick. He seems to have good hands, and the thing that I like the most about him is, for a small guy, he initiates contact. He doesn't try and back away from it. He sticks his head in there. He reminds me of back when I was young and watched Walter Payton finish every run. That's kind of how he looked to me. So I don't see, now that being said, I don't think he's going to be an every down back anywhere, but if put in a right situation with a bigger back, could he be the third down back and catch some passes? I think so. I don't think he's going to have an outstanding, he's not a Christian McCaffrey or anything like that, but he could be a useful end of the bench player, I think.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. I think expectations for me have definitely been tempered with Walton. The guy's got to stay healthy. He's got to stay on the field. He dealt with a lot of injuries when he was at Miami, but he is very strong. He's very powerful, like you said, for a guy who's 5'10", 195, 200, whatever he's at right now. I've seen him listed anywhere from 188 up to 210, so I honestly don't know what he weighs. But I do know that for his size, he is very strong. He is very powerful. Just got to stay on the field to make it happen. Another question in the chat. Aunt Jemima wants you to rank the rookie tight ends for this upcoming season. Again, don't give us 15 of them, but if you want to give us 3, 4, 5, whatever you want, how do you have them right now, Dustin?
Rookie tight ends. Who would I go with if I was drafting a rookie tight end? I like how do you say his name? Gesicki or whatever. The Penn State tight end.
Mike Gesicki. Yep.
I'm pretty good with him. I like the Dallas Goedert out of South Dakota State, and I also like the Alabama guy. I'm gonna have to look at Mark Andrews. That's his name, right?
Mark Andrews from Oklahoma.
Oklahoma, yeah. Those would be my top 3, I think.
I said Goddard, Gesicki was my top 2, and then I put Hayden Hurst in there as my number 3. But certainly you can definitely make a case for Andrews. I know there's a lot of big believers in his talent out there as well. So we'll and again, landing spot. That's going to be so key with these guys. Let's get back to the emails here. Jesse in Montclair, New Jersey writes, "Hey, High Stakes Honcho is curious on your thoughts on Michael Gallup and whether he could sneak into the back end of FFPC rookie drafts in May." Thanks for the email, Jesse. And what I just said, it depends on landing spot. You know, if this guy goes to a team that could use a receiver like Dallas, like Green Bay in the second round, I think Gallup definitely will be a first-round pick for sure in that back end of the first round. If he goes on slips a little bit, goes to a team where the opportunity maybe isn't readily available, then no, he's probably not a first-round pick. I think he's a very talented guy. His production, Colorado State, was really, really awesome. He had a ton of the target share in that offense. Really great hands, hardly dropped. I think I can't remember. I'm going to butcher the stat now, but it was something like he had 0 red zone drops or something like that over the course of the season, which means that if you threw it to him, he was catching it, for a touchdown or in the red zone his entire final season at Colorado State. It was some incredible stat like that. I'm sure I'm butchering it, but it was a very good stat from Michael Gallup. Dustin, what are your thoughts on Michael Gallup this year?
I think he's got all the physical tools to come in and perform at that level. Playing at Colorado State against the competition he played against, does he step in and does he need a little seasoning? I'd imagine that wherever he ends up, again, like you said, it's going to be where do you end up and what's the opportunity where you get to. You might have to be a little bit patient with him right out of the gates, but I think he definitely has the physical tools, and like you said, he, from what I watched of him, catches everything. He makes some really nice, difficult acrobatic catches. I think that he could be a good piece. Am I going to draft him in the first round? He would have to end up somewhere like a Dallas or a San Francisco or somewhere where there's definitely a need in a passing offense for me to go that high on him. But I see him definitely being a mid-second round pick.
Let's see. Tyler in Jacksonville, Florida, has a trade question. He says, when I wasn't looking, my team got old. I enjoyed 2 titles in the past 5 seasons, thanks to guys like Des Bryant, Jordy Nelson, and Michael Crabtree, but they all seem to be on the backside of their careers and with new teams to boot. I got offered the 105 rookie pick for Cooper Kupp. Should I give in and start the rebuild now? Thank you for the email, Tyler in Jacksonville, Florida. So a couple of things here that strike me right off the top of my head. If Dave was here, I know he would rather have Cooper Kupp than the 105. He is sky high on Cooper Kupp's value, even with the Cooks trade. I know Dave is a big Cooper Kupp fan. But I will say this, Cooper Kupp, if you're going to rebuild, I mean, to me, that should be a guy that you kind of use as part of your rebuild. I mean, this guy is super young. If you trade him for the 105, I guess you could hit a home run with the 105. But first round rookie draft picks, I mean, they bust a lot. So I think I'd rather have Kupp there. It's not like he's old. I mean, this could be a foundation piece as you try to get younger at receiver. That's my thoughts. Dustin, what are yours?
At the 105, what are you going to bring in that's going to be equivalent? You probably get a guy who you're hoping to be as productive as Cooper Kupp was last year. I probably hang on to Kupp instead of taking that shot. At the 105, I don't know. I think I keep Kupp. But like you said, I bust out on so many rookie draft picks in the first round that I'd rather have the proven commodity. And in that offense, even with bringing in Cooks, I don't see Cooks as being all that much differently used in that offense than Watkins was last year. I think Kupp maintains the similar target share that he had, so I'd hang on to Kupp too, probably.
Yeah, Tyler, don't do that deal. Keep the Kupp. Final email tonight. This is from Brian in Fayetteville, North Carolina. He writes, "Dear mostly Dustin and some bulky, I guess." All right, well, that's a ringing endorsement for me. "I'm about ready to push the reset button on Josh Doctson and take my losses. I can get the 201 rookie pick for him right now. Should I see if something better comes along or click accept now? Your show is the best in spite of the hosts." That is Brian in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Brian, I will give you a half-hearted thank you on that. There's a lot of venom that was spit at us in that email. But when it comes down to it, he needs to know, should he wait for a better deal than the 201 for Josh Doctson right now? Should he hang on to Josh Doctson and pass this deal? What would you be doing if this offer was sent to you, Dustin?
Can we wait and see who's available at 2.01?
Well, the thing is, now this is the time element of this too, right? Because now Doctson was probably worth a little bit more before the Redskins went out and signed Paul Richardson. Now maybe his value, there's some shine off that. So I think that there's a time element here too. Of the longer you wait, I mean, they could add another significant receiver in the draft. I don't know. I don't know if you're going to do much better than 201 right now.
I would actually. I was very high on Josh Doctson coming out, but he can't. Dude can't stay healthy. Can't stay on the field, and if you're not out there on the field, you're not helping me. And as it was when he came out, he wasn't the youngest guy when he came out. What is he? 25 or 26 now? If for me, I think. And here we talk about 25 and 26 being old again, but if it's me, I think I go ahead and I might take that deal and invest in a younger player who might be a little healthier.
Yeah, he will, and I'm with you, by the way. I would rather have the 201. He will actually turn 20. This is his age 26 season, so Josh Doctson will actually turn 26 this season. Boy, it doesn't seem like that long ago that he was being drafted, but he has the competition there. I mean, if Jordan Reed could ever get on the field, he would deal with them, but still Jamison Crowder, still Paul Richardson. We don't know what they'll do in the draft. It's I don't know. I guess I'm down on Doctson.
Wouldn't be shocked if
right
Des
now.
Bryant's sitting there. Wouldn't be shocked.
Or Des Bryant. Yeah, I mean, like, who knows? There's a lot of different ways that Washington can still go with that passing game. We'll kind of have a more finite idea of what they did after the NFL draft. And we had a finite idea that this is going to be a good show, and I think we realized that tonight, Dustin. I want to thank you so much for hanging out with me, for co-hosting. You did a great job, a lot of great insight on how to manage FFPC Dynasty teams properly, a lot of good player analysis, and some rookie ranks we even got on the show tonight from you with the running backs and tight ends too. So that was awesome. Best of luck to you in your rookie drafts this year, sir, and all of your drafts, your football guys, your redrafts, everything. And good luck in all your Dynasty League, man. I really appreciate you coming on, and hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation, and anytime. It was fun.
Dustin Miller, ladies and gentlemen, the $500 number 25 FFPC league winner from last year. So awesome stuff from him. And that's going to do it for our show tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I know that Ron Meyer, wanted to play a Would You Rather with all the Amari Cooper deals he just sent out. I'm not going to subject you all to that tonight. But if you want, maybe I'll put up a poll and just and we'll see what the there's no good way to do that, to put up all those singular potential trades out on a poll. That's going to be difficult to do. We'll do something. We'll try to figure it out and see if Two-Packer can pull off the Amari Cooper trade coming up before the NFL draft. So like I said, that's going to do it for our show. Next week, first of all, I want to thank Dustin Miller for coming on the FFPC, Rob Bryce, and of course all of you for listening. Next week, Dave will be back. He will be in studio. Plus, we will have 1250 number 2 FFPC Dynasty champion Steve Lee as our guest next week. That will be very awesome. As he joins the show, I want to remind everybody to register for the main event. Get in on those best ball leagues that we have going on, plus those Dynasty startups. You know, I fully planned on Dustin saying, hey, don't do that trade. I was almost going to say, hey, I'll leave it up to you if I should accept this or not, because I figured he'd say Evans for sure. And he did. Said he might pull the trigger. Now I'm a little nervous. I don't know what exactly I should be doing on this. The crowdsourcing in the chat room is saying I should stick with Evans. Aunt Jemima saying that maybe I want to counter with giving up Evans for the 110 and Amari Cooper. These are all things I'm going to have to ruminate on tonight and see if I can help both Two-Packer and me out tonight. So I'm not going to bore you with it any longer. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk with you again next week with Dave Gerzak and Steve Lee.
I'm Jonathan Messenger, broadcasting to you live from my home, where I record a kids podcast with my son Griffin.
John dreams of inspiring other parents to create something with their kids. American Family Insurance is helping to make that dream happen right now.
Dad, what else does a monster look like?
It was so huge.
John's podcast began at home, and your dreams can too. Learn more about American Family's home insurance at mfam.com. American Family Insurance. Insure carefully, dream fearlessly.
American Family Mutual Insurance Company SI and its operating company 6000 American Parkway, Madison, Wisconsin 53783.
I'm Jonathan Messenger, broadcasting to you live from my home, where I record a kids podcast with my son Griffin.
John dreams of inspiring other parents to create something with their kids. American Family Insurance is helping to make that dream happen right now.
Dad, what else does a monster look like?
It was so huge.
John's podcast began at home, and your dreams can too. Learn more about American Family's home insurance at mfam.com. American Family Insurance. Insure carefully, dream fearlessly.
American Family Mutual Insurance Company SI and its operating company 6000 American Parkway, Madison, Wisconsin 53783.